Welcome to What Would Sabrina Say? I'm Sabrina Dong, and I'm excited you're joining me today. In this podcast, I dive into mental health topics on relationships, and overall well-being. With over 20 years of experience as a licensed clinical social worker, I share insights and invite expert guests who are passionate about making a positive difference. I started this podcast because I was frustrated with the often misleading or recycled information in social media involving self-help and the mental health field. My goal is to provide you with genuine, useful content that's educational and informative. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you find our conversations both enlightening and empowering. I'm glad you're here. Hi, welcome Dr. Achacoso. Thanks for joining us today. I understand you're a child therapist and a psychologist where you specialize in working with children and families. So just wondering if you could introduce yourself and share a bit about your services that you offer families as well.
All right. Thank you, Sabrina. I'm honored to be here. So I have been in practice for going on 21 years, and I work with children and families and parents. So with children, my specialty is child-centered play therapy. With families, my specialty is adventure-based family therapy. And then with parents, I do parent coaching, usually virtually. So that's one unneeded or one stop that they don't have to have an office appointment for. And a lot of parents, especially if they're divorced, appreciate the virtual appointments to check in about their kids and also to learn some new parenting skills.
Can you explain a bit about the difference between, child therapy and adventure-based? I know sometimes it may look like there's just play or just activities, but there's always a purpose to it. There's an assessment, there's ways to gather information, and even also a treatment.
Well, play therapy is a developmentally appropriate way for children to tell me what's going on, not only in their physical world, but their psychological and emotional world. So the toys are the words, the play is the language, and especially for young kids, and my favorite age group is 3 to 5, it's wonderful how they can work on things in the course of play. I'm child-centered, so our philosophy is once a child walks through the playroom door, they know what they need to work on, and it'll come out in their play. So if something's really on their mind or even subconsciously, it'll come out in their play, and then my job is to facilitate that conversation. So as a child-centered play therapist, I don't ask questions. I ask them to really continue the story of what they're sharing. Now with the adventure-based family therapy, it's not the traditional family therapy where we're on a couch in a family room and then hashing out what happened maybe many days ago because families don't see me but maybe once a week depending on their schedule. So the adventure-based incorporates play into the sessions that I have with families, and it's based on the ropes course that corporations use to build teams and work on relationships and strong personalities. So it's tailored down to families where I don't have them dangling in trees or tightrope walking. It's strictly ground-based, but it's a lot of fun. And what happens is the family's so focused on the activity and having fun that the natural family dynamics can come out, especially if there is a little stressor introduced in the activity. And then I get to see the dynamics, how they play out. And then if there is a time where they can't proceed anymore in the activity, we sit down on the lawn and on the grass and then talk about what happened. And usually what happens there during the activity is happening at home. And that's where the real therapy starts.
Right. So sometimes there might be worry of the therapist not getting the full picture or understanding the dynamics at home in session, but it can happen naturally in the environment still for you to be able to observe the interaction and still give input.
Correct. So, for example, if the activity breaks down because one of the family members wasn't listening or that sort of thing, when we sit down, I address the family, not that particular family member, and say, hey, I want to make an observation. It's not a judgment, but I noticed that you couldn't proceed with the activity because something happened. And usually when I leave it vague like that, someone chimes up like, yeah, Johnny wasn't listening to mom, and that's why we had to stop. And then if someone brings it up, then I say, all right, well, I'm wondering if sometimes this happens at home where Johnny doesn't listen to mom. And then that's when they talk about things, right? Because everyone's feeling it, everyone saw it happen or experienced it happen during the adventure-based family activity. And then we tie it into what's happening at home.
That's great. How beneficial would you say it is to involve the family in the child therapy or supporting the child with the concerns?
I think it's absolutely necessary, and I really require it of a lot of the families I work with because we need everyone involved, right? All hands on deck. Because it's one thing for me to do play therapy with a child and for them to really address things that they need to work on. But then if they go home to an environment that's causing them to feel a certain way or act a certain way, nothing's changed, then really my progress and the work I do with children in play therapy can be all for naught. And then, it could be even more stressful for the child having all these wonderful coping skills or, feeling good after a play therapy session to only go back to, the home that they're used to.
Right. So it may be, certainly hard for a child to use new tools and resources without anyone else having an idea of how to support or what's going on. It can feel rather self-defeating. And I find sometimes it gives the message to the child that they need to be fixed or this is something that they have to do alone or they're the issue. And that can make it all the more harder just to be able to provide that support or see changes. Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. And in my parent coaching, when the kids find out that I'm working with their parents or even ask, why are you meeting with my parents? I give them the answer of, I want your parents to be the best parent they can be for you. And it's really good feedback to me when I see a kid the following week after meeting with the parent, and I'm teaching the parents how to interact and have a conversation with their child, like how I have a conversation in the playroom. And then for that, the following week, to say, Dr. Joey, why are my parents talking like you? And then, so, I'm saying, well, I've been working with them. Remember, I want them to be the best parents they can be for you. Are you okay with the way they're talking? They're like, yeah, this is so great. To know they're not yelling at me anymore or screaming or losing their temper with me. And then it's a whole systemic effort where everyone's involved and everyone's trying to make changes. Families get so used to doing this dance, everyone knows the steps. They want things to change. So if they want things to change, for let's say little Johnny is meeting behavioral expectations, well then they have to do a different dance. Everyone has to learn new steps.
Right. That's a great analogy for it. And I know we wanted to talk about one common concern today. I'm sure there's lots of areas we can cover in supporting families, but a common concern that parents have around social media. What do you find are a common concern or focus that parents have involving social media with children and youth?
There are several concerns. I think the main ones are the amount of screen time, depending on the age of the child that they spend. So if it's the younger children, I met with some parents yesterday that identified their child, admittedly, that they're the iPad baby or the iPad toddler. I think that's one concern that parents have, that the kids always ask for a tablet, or they have to have a screen for entertainment, immediate gratification. So what turns out to be screen time, I label it as scream time because it's hard for kids to stop. They can get addicted. And that's the other concern too, the addiction to screens, not just really for any child of any age in the family, but even for the parents themselves. So in my opinion, it's really one of the things that's ruining the fabric of our families. There's togetherness and just how everyone's getting involved. Because what I'm seeing in my practices and, experience myself personally is that relationships are being formed with the screen, whether it be a phone, tablet, if kids are playing video games like Roblox. That's where the relationship happens. And sometimes parents are concerned or they think, well, at least they're interacting with their friends virtually or talking to them. I want to see kids outside playing. right? That's developmentally something they need to do to learn how to get along, learn how to explore, learn how to be creative, and not have to be dependent on entertainment. It's really what it is. It's the entertainment value. I mean, we've all experienced it as parents or adults, being on a screen or whatever social media platform. And then it's uh, really even harder for kids and can get in the way of a lot of things. Another concern is cyberbullying, right? For the older kids, like middle school and up, or even I've seen some in the younger grades. It's so easy now because kids want to have that like, or want to have that thumbs up, or want to have followers or subscribers, or whatever it is, depending on the platform. And, some of it is, the popularity contest. And some of it is just getting that reinforcement that, hey, your post is really cool, or I like your picture. But then there are people that tend to bully and make posts that are very, very hurtful. And it's hard to navigate that because if a child is connected to social media practically 24/7, unless there are limits set by the parents, the cyberbullying can go on and almost like every minute of the day. So that's a big concern as well.
Right. And that can be hard for parents to navigate, schools to navigate when it's happening online. So that can also be a concern is around preventative measures or how to manage, right? So what are some ways that parents can manage screen time and ensure there's age appropriate content?
So one of the things I tell parents and teach them and really highly recommend, of course, it's their decision. They make the final decision. But for starters, it would be nice not to have any screen time for everyone in the family, including the parents, between dinner and bedtime. Because what I see when I coach parents is the biggest fights and arguments and conflicts happen in that time frame, especially right before bedtime, especially if a child is either on their phone or a tablet or playing a video game. Hard for them to stop. And so two things have to happen here. One is the parents have to model what that's like. So all screens, all remotes, if there's a TV involved, everything's put in a box or even a safe. Everything has to be on lockdown for there to be that screen-free time between dinner and bedtime. The other thing that needs to happen is, okay, we took that away. Now what, right? We need to replace that with something that the family can do because the last thing you want is, especially around bedtime where everyone's tired from the long day, is for these arguments and fights to happen. So, I recommend, what parents, depending on the age, right? Before smartphones and phones and all that, tablets, think about what they did when they were children, right? We have board games, and I still have kids coming to the playroom that are young that never heard of Monopoly before, or the Life game, or don't know how to play checkers. And then once I teach them, they're like, this is amazing. And then they go out to the waiting room and tell their parents, we have to get this game. Kids are interested, they're very curious. And if we start replacing the screen time with things that they enjoy or can enjoy, like board games or even card games, that can go a long way. Now, the other thing too is depending on where you are, down here in Texas, we're going up to near 80 today, and it's really nice. Between dinner and bedtime, and now that it's getting a little bit brighter later, go out for a walk, go biking, spend time outside with the family. Let's say it's like a Friday or Saturday night. If you're having dinner, plan a picnic, go out to the park, nearby park, or drive to the park. Sit down, spend time with your children. I'm talking to parents, but children will enjoy that. It's, I think, very passive and easy for us to just be on a screen, right? Because it doesn't really involve a lot of work. It's already there and set up. Um, but I think definitely setting those limits is important because this will go a long way for a child's future when they become an adult.
Definitely. I think, when there's interaction on social media versus in person, it requires different skills, different problem solving. It's a different type of interaction, requires less creativity and imagination. And we're also seeing all the effects of our challenges around continuous use of social media, right? Causes anxiety and interactions. And like you said, there's bullying that can be involved. During COVID, where social media was used a lot, we saw an increase in disordered eating and other issues. And it's so important to have that balance and that outdoor time, finding ways to connect to others and to the community.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a key word there, the connection. I think a lot of the sit down family dinners has been lost where kids are eating a nice meal with their parents. And it seems like families have gotten so busy these days where a lot of it is just takeout, right? On the way home. Parents are getting off work, kids are getting off, let's say, extended care or coming back from an after school activity. And there's really not a lot of time for family interaction or conversation where it's not so rushed. It seems like a lot of the dinners now happen in the car on the way home. And then by the time you get home, everyone is so tired. And I don't want the go-to be, hey, let's veg out on a screen, right? You guys stay on your tablet till bedtime. We'll be on our phones or tablets. I want there to still be some interaction and connection. Because if you think about it, in the traditional family where both parents are working, let's say kids are in school, they haven't seen each other for like 7 or 8 hours. And that re-entry where they start seeing each other. John Gottman says the quickest way to reconnect is to do a negative interaction, right? Because you have that person's undivided attention and it's an intense interaction, right? Let's say it's a fight or argument, but there's that connection, but it's negative, right? So I think it's really important to carve out that space for families where they can connect screen-free.
Right. I know there's lots of pressures from family around the quantity of time and not having it, but it's really about that quality of the time as well. And like you said, just not having any screens around and having the one-to-one interaction in a different way. Otherwise, it can, children can seek it out in ways that might cause more stress or challenges during a time where everybody is winding down. Mm-hmm.
I
Are
think,
there...
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh,
Sabrina.
sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, along with, setting those limits, especially between dinner and bedtime, parents come to me in my parent coaching sessions and say, well, what about the weekends, where we just want to relax and hang out and that sort of thing. And we're usually do it on a screen, right? Individually. We're not really interacting. The limits I think that I recommend, highly recommend on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, is no more than 30 minutes of screens if they want to do screens in the morning for the whole family, and then 30 minutes in the afternoon. And then, of course, setting that screen-free time between dinner and bedtime. There have been some parents or even like teenagers saying, well, can I put those 30 minutes back to back and just get my hour limit done in the morning or afternoon, when I wake up? And I'm like, no, because I want your body to be moving. Our bodies weren't designed to be sedentary, right? Our bodies are designed to be moving. And if we're not moving, we have all this pent up energy. And then for the older ones, I say, remember potential energy that you studied in your science class or physics class? That's what it is. And what happens is if that gets all pent up, some little thing can just set it off, especially when your mom says, all right, time to stop, using your phone. It's time to be screen free. Hey, it's time for us to go to church or what have you, right? Whatever the next transitional event is, sometimes that's when big blow-ups happen. So my work with parents is trying to set everyone up for success. And if we can have these things in place and it becomes part of the schedule, part of the routine, then we should have more happy families, especially around screen time.
Right. So just finding ways to set those healthy limits, noticing that maybe, can't be avoided 100% or completely for some families, to not have social media time, but what are some limits that will work and still encourage that parent-child interaction? Are there any benefits of educational apps or games? Is there, and then also risks to them? So maybe we could start with some benefits of anything that's out there.
Definitely, there's some educational apps that are good, right? Especially if you want your kid to focus on math or reading. I still highly recommend the old school learning how to read with books and pictures and a young child turning the page because I want them to get interested in the actual physical, tactile joy of reading, right? And not necessarily on a tablet. As far as games, video games for kids, and remember, this is all set within limits. I don't want some parents think, well, they're on an educational app. They can do that all Saturday, except for meals, and then, we'll feed them. I think limits still need to be set for sure, especially for the younger kids. And then if there's any video game that I would recommend that really highlights or really taps into creativity and imagination for the children, it's Minecraft, especially creative mode, right? I mean, if they want a little bit more challenge, survival mode. But what a wonderful thing for even the whole family, even for parents who may not be video game savvy. It's a wonderful way to interact with the child, even if they're just watching them build things and then talking to them about, hey, why did you decide to use those blocks instead of this one, right? They don't really have to know a lot about Minecraft, but they can see what's happening. There was one child that even had both parents watching. He was building a house, and he was building a house for the whole family. And he gave them a tour and say, Mom and Dad, this is your room. This is my room. Here's brother and sister's room, right? And I made us a big movie theater in the house with a popcorn machine and all that, or what looked like a popcorn machine. So there's a lot of imagination and connection that they can go on around a video game like Minecraft. And I think that would be really nice for the family. They can use it as a way to connect. The other thing too is with the older kids, I want them involved. I don't want this to be a top-down parent saying, okay, this is how it is. We heard an expert on Sabrina's podcast saying this is what we have to do for us to be a happy family. I think they need to get, especially, if it's like an older child or children, they need to get buy-in on what's happening, right? And then also maybe getting feedback. One of the movements is happening in Great Britain, and it's called Smartphone-Free Childhood. And it was founded by some parents, and it's gaining a lot of traction and starting to get some new laws in place. But that's a wonderful on Instagram. Your listeners look for that wonderful advice on how to set limits, and then also testimonies from kids saying something like, I thought I'd be lost. I thought I'd be like, I couldn't live every day without my phone or connected to social media. But what I found is it was a freeing experience. I didn't know that I could experience the world screen free. And it's been really good. So you hear this from teenagers, from preteens, even some younger kids who are writing testimonies on this Instagram site.
Wow, that's great to hear that even children and teens experience the benefits of having a break from it and just that connection interaction. And there's creative ways for children to even use crafts to create their own game or board game to interact with friends or family. So again, you can find ways to use interest in a creative way that doesn't always involve screen time as well. Or back to Legos and building their other fun and interactive activities that even use, that are sensory based, that can help with regulation as well. So that can be helpful too for parents. But that's really important where you mentioned involving youth or teens as much as you can in this process and explaining the benefits of limiting or having less time there. And I think when families experience the benefits of not being around it as much, it's a bit easier. But I wanted to touch on why it's important for that parent-child interaction and for it to not involve screens so much.
So what I said earlier about how it seems to me that we are forming a relationship with something that's inanimate, right? Whether it be a phone or a tablet, whatever screen it is, and less of a relationship, working on the relationship with our child or even with our spouse. I haven't really tapped into the research, but I'm hoping someone's looking at how this is really, like I said earlier, ruining the fabric of our family and the connection and the interconnectedness, and really the solid foundation that families are having a hard time with. I mean, it's one thing where, our society shifted to mom not being a stay-at-home mom anymore and joining the workforce, right? And then kids are in after-school care or even daycare if they're younger. But then now we add the screens in where, there's even more of a disconnect or not really that relationship, that strong bond between parents and child. So I think this is really important for parents and starting as early as they can, with preteens and teenagers. It's still not too late. I was coaching a father many, many years ago, and I was helping him set limits. He's got 3 boys, all under the age of 9, or 9, 6, and 3. And I said, hey, here's what needs to happen. I need for you to set the foundation and setting screen limits right now because we want them to grow up successfully, not only in their adult lives, but, as they're going through school, where each grade gets harder and harder. And so after I worked with him for a few weeks, he started seeing results and then even a change in behavior, especially the aggressiveness in his boys. He told me, I wish you were around when I was a kid, when I was my son's age, because my parents could have really helped me with this. Um, I was a gamer. I stayed up all night. I kind of coasted through high school because, I was smart. I was a good test taker. But once I hit college, same thing. I'd be missing classes though, and those counted. And I didn't do so well. I had to drop out. And finally, he was 29 at the time. He said, finally at 25, I said, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And he told himself, I'm going to make a commitment not to play any more video games. I'm going to focus on school. He went back, got his bachelor's, and now he's successful. And so he doesn't have that as a distraction now as a father. So he can be more present with his boys, 3 boys. So, there are wonderful benefits, as anyone knows, but the hardest part is, like in any addiction, weaning yourself off the screen or, sometimes with adults, TikTok. Like when TikTok went, I don't know, radio silent or not accessible to people, and people were posting like, what am I going to do now?
Devastated, yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's where we can definitely notice, I think, the dependency when those things happen and we realize how much maybe we're spending our time on things. And so the definite benefit of finding time for parents to interact with their child is building that bond, that closeness, ability for to listen, be there for their child, for the child not to feel so isolated and lonely from maybe things that they're dealing with, which is why it's so important to have that connection. Also, I think a lot of children are feeling pressures of an anxiety around having so much to do, so much homework, so much activities, and just needing more of that downtime as a family, which there just seems to be so much busyness for families these days.
There's one family where they decided as a family, and they had some preteens and teenagers, they have a big sectional couch in their family room, and they designated 1 hour on Saturday, 1 hour on Sunday, just to have couch potato time, but not vegging out watching TV. It's reading books. Like, so they go to the library or they go to half price books, and then they go find a book that they like. And then they just have an hour of just reading, silently by each other on the sectional couch. Or if they read something interesting, they might say, hey guys, check this out. I just read this. Maybe we can have a conversation about it. So there's a lot of things that people can do when they need to relax, especially on the weekends, right? Because sometimes during the week it's go, 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 where it doesn't involve a screen. It doesn't have to involve a screen, right? One of the stats that I read, so my family practices that where we're just reading and just, hanging out with each other reading. I was trying to do research more because this is a big topic for me when I parent coach, the screen time limits. And there was a stat that I read, the smartphone-free childhood, people put this on their Instagram post, but I didn't read the source. But it said the average person, and I think that was just in Europe or Great Britain, the average person spends in a year, like how many months of the year do you think they spend if they tallied it all together on a screen? How many months?
Probably 2 months worth.
Very close. Very good. 2.5 months.
Wow.
Isn't that mind-boggling? And then so, I have parents where I say, hey, I'm an empty nester. And, my son, we did lots of things outdoors and everything. I don't want you to have a regret when your children move away or move off to college, where you say, I wish I spent more time with them. Where did the time go? They're already grown up. They're an adult. Why did we spend all this time on screens or allow them to spend all the time on screens? I wish I spent more time with them. I really missed a lot of their childhood because of that.
Right. So it's important not just for parents to connect to, but I think also families in general finding ways to connect, whether it's time on the weekends together or functions. Or I remember, as a kid being involved in, sports and having family come and watch, or uh, have an event and then go ice skating after and have hot cocoa. And it's just so important, I think, again, to feel connected to many people for that support or have those interactions and feel that sense of family connection.
Yes, I agree. I think the really important part too, and part of the pushback that parents get from the older children, especially the tweeners and the teens, is, well, that's when I talk to my friends after dinner or right before bedtime. And you're saying I can't do that now? So what the smartphone-free childhood movement in Great Britain is doing is all the parents have to be on board so that your child can't use that argument of, well, she's only available, my friend's only available between dinner and bedtime to chat. Are you going to prevent me from doing that? So if all parents are on board and on the same page, especially with the limit of no screens between dinner and bedtime, then, it's a moot point. And if there's still pushback, it's like, well, you'll see your friend tomorrow. You'll probably have a lot of time to talk. I can even bring you to school earlier if you want, and you can hang out. I already checked with their mom and dad, and they said they would do that too. So lots of ways to do workarounds, right? Because we want our brains and everyone in the family to start relaxing because it can get very stimulated with a screen or even the blue light, right, that radiates from our phones or screens. And then definitely not having the kids have access to their phones or screens after their head hits the pillow
Mm-hmm.
because sleep, right? Sleep's very important. When I tell parents, but I get the pushback from parents, but I don't think I can do that. I can't be without my phone between dinner and bedtime because I have work calls or someone might call me. I'm like, well, they're just gonna have to wait till after your kid is in bed. I mean, you can go screens galore uh, to a limit, right, for parents as well, because that's self-care, right? Their sleep is important too. But if you have to answer a work call, just tell them, hey, this is my family time. This is important to me. And we decided as a family to have screen free between whatever, let's say 7 and 9 p.m. And so if something needs to happen with work, then I will contact you after that time period is over.
Right. It seems to be a trend of work or other responsibilities spilling into the family time or personal time, and seeing that as almost non-negotiable when it's necessary to have that time and interaction with kids or as a family, right? And I'm an aunt, and I'm hoping, to have interactions with my niece and hang out and connect. Although there's times in her life she might find friends more important and to be another person of support, right? So even using extended family as a way to bond as well and connect over maybe screen time.
Well, I really want our children to get the message that from parents that you're more important to me than work. And even if a work call does come in, let's say the phones are in an old Amazon box or shoe box, which I recommend, right? Out of sight, out of mind. All the screens are tucked away, but the ringer is still on. And they can tell that's dad's ringer or mom's ringer, right? And if that parent says, that's work, I'll call them after our time period's over at 9 or after you guys are in bed because you matter to me more. Wow, that goes a long
That's
way,
huge.
right? Because remember, if the day is so busy, right? I'm talking about like a school day, work day kind of thing. Really, the only time the family has to spend with each other could be that dinner time between dinner and bed time thing. Make the most of it where there's no distractions from a screen.
Mm-hmm. So there's many examples we highlighted of ways that parents can connect with their children or youth during the day. So at time of winding down, playing board games together, cooking or baking together is a great time. Spending time attending community events, festivals, supporting each other with sports, finding time to connect to extended family, being part of any type of denomination if they practice of a a certain faith, right, or belong to certain parts of a community. There's many different ways, I think, and creative ways as well too out there for families to research.
Right. And I think the important part here, Sabrina, is that physical connection and interaction, right? Not having that relationship, like I said earlier, with the screen,
Yeah.
or having that virtual relationship or interaction with a friend, right? Whether it be the adult or the child. I like what you said about the cooking. When I coach parents, I also recommend that the children, especially if they're grade school age, they be involved in the meal planning, what happens during the week, because then everyone in the family is committed to, all right, we're eating at home, right? Here's what we're doing. And then for the child, depending on the age, to take a charge of one of the meals, like let's say Taco Tuesday, right? I want to do tacos because that can be simple. And if they're old enough, maybe a parent can help them brown the meat, right? But then all the ingredients are laid out and everyone assembles their own tacos. So when I say meal planning, and let's say a child picks, hey, I want to do tacos Tuesday, I'll take the lead on that. It's from start to finish. All right. Um, we got to list the ingredients for what you want for us to have tacos with on Tuesday. So let's make a grocery list. And then after the list is made, right, let's say they do the meal planning Sunday, then they're off to the grocery store. And that particular child, or maybe they're teaming up, let's say they're two children, they're involved in getting all the ingredients, right? Because this is teaching them a life skill, not only to meal plan, to make a grocery list, but then also to go to the grocery store and pick out the ingredients. And then when Tuesday comes, right, if that's the day that they chose, they're responsible for laying it out with the parents' guidance, but they take the lead. Okay, what are the steps? What do we need to do? And then setting the table. Because not only do I want them to interact, right, in this, there's something about having a meal together as a family, or if we experience or you experience it as being with friends at a potluck or meeting them at a restaurant, there's something about the breaking of the bread metaphorically together that really even intensifies that bond interaction with the people around the meal or the dinner table.
Yes, definitely. I remember as, a child and youth growing up, that was something that we couldn't miss. It was something we had to be home for, had to all be part of together. Looking back was opportunity for everybody to share about their day, which I understand now doesn't happen in every family. And I assume that's how it was for people growing up, is just to communicate, share, talk about different subjects. And I think it's really important as well. I remember as a family all, doing chores together on one part of the weekend and playing, a record on a record player. And I still remember those songs now as a kid, taking me back to like when we all had to clean and despite our protest. But now it's a nice memory that we did that together as a family, and it was modeled. So these are definitely opportunities to still create memories too with kids as well.
There was one mom I work with where in the summertime, she was a single mom and she had 4 boys, bless her heart, right? But she didn't want them just being on a screen or tablet, right, to occupy their summer days. Um, she was fortunate to have her parents helping out. And so what she did was like, all right, guys, we are actually going to be screen free this whole summer. And they're like, what? No, kind of thing. But she said, no, here's what we're going to do. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun. It's not going to cost us any money. We're going to find different parks in our city, even if you want, right? If we really get into it, even within a 10-mile radius of our home, right? But I'm going to need your help doing the research of where we're going to go. And then, each week we're going to hang out at that park, explore. If there are trails, we're going to walk around. We're going to be out in nature. It's going to be super fun. So she did this project and the boys were all about it because they could explore, they could be adventurous, they could play on a playscape if the parks had it. And then she packed a picnic for them so that they could hang out there pretty much all day. And by the time they got home, they were so exhausted. At bedtime after dinner, they were going to sleep like an hour or two earlier than bedtime. And then they were ready for the next day. They were waking up. They had it all planned out. So I think if we put the substitutions there, which are positive, and very pro-family, right? Being together, interacting. The kids are going to forget about, the screen and their relationship with it and the entertainment they get, because there's a whole world out there that has to be and needs to be explored, especially by children, even parents. And then, like you were saying, Sabrina, kind of reliving some of the things that you experienced as a child with your family and the togetherness. I mean, that's what I want kids to experience. I want them to have memories from childhood that they can say, like you, here's what we did. I didn't necessarily like it at the time, but our family was working together on this. My favorite childhood memory are all the summer road trips we took. My dad was a professor at LSU. We had these national conferences all over the United States. And we would plan. My dad was a great planner, my mom too. And we would do the road trips in our 70s station wagon, and we would go all these places. And we even made it up to Canada, your homeland there, when we went up to Niagara Falls. My dad had a conference up at Penn State University. He says, we're pretty close to Niagara Falls. We're going to make an excursion out there. But those were great memories, very adventurous memories. We would be up at 4 or 5. Dad would pack the car, the station wagon. We would help him. I remember smelling their thermos of coffee when it opened. I'm like, coffee smells so good. But they're like, no, you can't have any. Boys, I had 2 younger brothers as well, hyper. And then we would get donuts, and they would dip the donut in the coffee and let me have that. And oh my gosh, talk about a sugar and caffeine rush all in one. But anyway, it's these fun memories, right? And that's what I want our kids telling.
Yeah.
This is what I tell my kids. These are the memories. And then so as a parent, because my father really instilled that in us, and my mom too, these trips that we took in the summer, we've been on lots of adventures, right? And that's what I hope they hold dear to their heart. Not, wow, I remember the iPad I got when I was 4 years old kind of thing. Or I remember doing really well in this Roblox game. I mean, that can be a memory, but I don't want it to be a fond memory that they remember their family.
Right. And there's so many, museums, or I remember, going to the library as a trip as a family, and there's so many programs there. It doesn't always necessarily have to be costly, or, like you mentioned, one parent who's creative with the picnics. There's so many ways to explore. And I've met people where I've ventured off on trails in my area, and people have lived here for over a decade and said, I didn't even know that existed, that trail behind us or near my place. Or I didn't even know this place was near me. So I think even for adults to be adventurous of exploring their surroundings and getting excited about it as well too. And kids can help with that.
For sure. I think there's an argument that, well, we have all these educational apps, they're on their iPad, they're learning a lot, but a lot of that can be beneficial, but I think it leaves a little bit out as far as imagination and creativity and critical thinking in a way. There was a group of researchers in Sweden that they had to test out their theory. They said, would kids who've never met each other before find a way to figure out how to play together, interact, problem solve, if we just took them to this area that looks like a playground, but it's just an empty field. And we put lots of different things, just odds and ends in there, like a spare tire, a piece of plywood, all these things that you would never know would fit together. And then the parents were there watching, but they just let their kids go and experience and try to play with each other and figure it out. So there was a lot of pretend play. There were kids building things or stacking things. Everything was safe. Nothing was sharp or anything, that sort of thing. And kids, the parents were like kind of holding their breath in some instances. But kids, they were laughing. They were having so much fun. And they didn't even know each other. These were kids, of course, the families volunteered for this research study. But it just goes to show that, kids need physical interaction. They need to be moving in space. They need to have that opportunity to be creative, to try new things, to take risks, and then also to feel included. I mean, just that big psychological phenomena. Our human nature is not to be alone. We need to be connected with other people. And you see this so much, with children. Even if they don't know each other, they'll find a way to connect through play.
I think because it is such a natural way for children to communicate, to explore their world, and to learn those problem-solving skills, that there's so much to it that we may not notice in seeing those types of interactions, and why it's so important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially having things happen organically, or if a challenge or problem comes up where maybe another kid's being very dominant and they're sharing of ideas, right? Not not the pushing or shoving, not physically dominant. I'm talking about dominating the conversation airspace. There's that give and take. Or, hey, I want to do my idea, but your idea sounds pretty good too. Why don't we do yours first? And then we try mine. So they notice a lot of these things happening where kids are learning how to negotiate, how to get along because they know that they have to take turns. And, it's something that's taught in the classroom, but then to have it happen organically with kids you don't know, but in a space where you can be creative and play, if they don't cooperate, right? If they don't find a way to negotiate, then the play is not going to happen, right? So they found that they do found that the kids found a way to make things work so that they could play together.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, the research. There's so much out there.
There is. It sure is.
I'm wondering, Dr. Joe, if you'd like to share where people can find you, parents, if they're wanting more information about your coaching, what you offer, learning more about adventure-based play, or how you can help and support.
Okay, so my practice is here in the Austin area. I'm in Pflugerville, Texas, which is a suburb north of Austin, just about 18 miles. But my parent coaching I do virtually, so I can do that anywhere, really in the United States, the world. If anyone wants, some help, needs some extra guidance, I'll be glad to help them. So that can be done virtually. Two ways you can reach me. One is my phone number, my work number, which is 512-576-25. You can also reach me via email at drjoeya, drjoeya, all lowercase, at yahoo.com. And then lastly, if you want to learn more about me, like I said, it's my 21st year in practice. I have a doctorate in child psychology. My website is www.drjoeyplay.
Great. Thanks so much for your information. And I'll also have that information available and posted as well on my site and wherever my podcast will be aired. So thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Joey, and sharing your knowledge with us and such important and helpful tips for children, youth, and families at this time involving social media. And I'd love to have you back to talk about any other topics that are helpful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.